Welcome Rangers to this Snowflake GenAI series. Now, in this particular series, we'll focus on creating a Cortex Analyst. I have some of the business user requests. I'll try to find the answers of those business users with the help of the Cortex Analyst instead of writing any SQL code. So, let's start it. So, firstly, you need to navigate to the project section. So, the first thing we'll do is we'll take some of the data set. Okay, I have taken a data set called Superstore. That superstore data has something like customers, orders, and products, etc. So before starting this series, I'll create a role called Cortex Analyst, which will be particularly for this session. So let's start. Jump in it. I'm using the account admin role. Okay. Next, I'll create a role called Cortex Analyst. Okay. So now I have created a Cortex Analyst role. Now I'll grant some of the privileges. Some of the privileges like creation of warehouse and creation of database. For this particular series, we will be using this Cortex Analyst role itself. So I'll grant myself to this particular role. Okay. I'm granting myself this particular Cortex Analyst role to my username. Okay. Then I'll set my default role as Cortex Analyst. Okay. I'll set my default warehouse as Cortex Warehouse. So we'll use the Cortex Analyst role. We'll create a warehouse and we'll use this warehouse Cortex Warehouse. Okay. Apart from that, we'll create a database called Superstore where we'll store our data for this particular session. So whatever the data which I have is particularly in the CSV format. Let's see what exactly is in our dataset. So our dataset consists of five tables, right? One of them is customers, one of them is orders, one of them is products, order items, and regions. This is my ER diagram for this particular session. Okay. I'll create a file format for the CSV since I'm using all my files are CSV. Okay. I'll create a stage. From this particular data stage, we'll load this into the respective tables. Okay. You can directly load into your tables once creating without having any creation of any stages with the help of tables internal stages. So for this thing, I will be using a data stage, internal data stage. Once I have used this created this data stage, I'll create the tables for the customers, for the regions, for the products. So let's check our data stage. Okay, I'll just simply do a ls. Okay, my data stage is empty now, right? So let's load our files into the data set. So now navigate to the catalog, go to the database explorer, right? In the database explorer, you will find your superstore which we have created. In this particular thing, you have the sales schema. In this schema, you'll get a stage. You'll get a stage. In this data stage, let's load the files. I'll use the snow site since my files MB is less than 250. These are all the files which I wanted to. My your files have been uploaded. Now let's go to our workspaces. So now click on this ls command to check what are the files have been uploaded. If you see here, right, the customers file has been uploaded, order items.csv is uploaded, orders have been uploaded, products have been uploaded, and regions have been uploaded. Okay. So from this, I'll just sample one of the data set, how exactly it looks, product IDs, and these are my product descriptions. It looks good, right? Now we'll copy this particular products from our data stage to the particular table. I'm using my copy into command. Similarly, I do for the regions. Once all my files have been uploaded, let's preview the data, how exactly it looks. My customer data looks. So our data has been loaded successfully into the respective tables. Now my business users have some of the requirements. Which state or city is generating highest or which product category is both the best selling and the most profitable. Okay. Or which customer segment is bringing in the most profit. So for this particular thing, we'll try to fetch the answers without writing any SQL with the help of the Cortex Analyst. Okay. I wanted to fetch the what is the most preferred shipping mode among our customers. Most of the business users will approach the data engineers for their help to write, okay, get this answers for this. For example, they what is the most preferred shipping mode, then data engineers would write some of the SQL so that they get some of the things insights like, okay, the shipping mode is being mostly used is a standard class, right? Since we know our business requirements, now let's jump into the creation of a semantic view. In my previous video, I have mentioned it clearly, like semantic view is the translator. So our natural language will be translated to the SQL with the help of this semantic view. So if you want to go to the semantic view, you can go directly with the help of the studio, right? Or you can click directly onto the Cortex Analyst. So in the Cortex Analyst, you can create your semantic views or you can create your semantic models. Semantic models is a little bit older version, you just need to drop your YAML file into your data stage and it will create a semantic model for you. Or you can create with the help of this semantic view. When I create a semantic view, I don't have my privilege of creating a semantic view. So let's grant the privilege first. So I'll grant this privilege create semantic view to the sales schema, for the sales schema to the Cortex Analyst role. Once I have granted this privilege, now let's check the Cortex Analyst. The Cortex Analyst, you need to switch to your role. Your role is Cortex Analyst, okay, default role, and your warehouse will be Cortex warehouse, right? Now you can create a semantic view. If you see, you have the privilege now. So let me give my semantic view name as Superstore semantic view. Once I gave the name for the Superstore semantic view, you can optionally provide the description or you can ignore it. It's an optional way. The next thing is you can provide some of the verified queries. If you have some of the verified queries and those results are already been verified, you can also provide those. I'll skip for this session. So now I need to select on which database or on which tables I want to create a semantic model for these particular 5 tables. Okay, I click on the next. Okay, I have selected 5 of them and I'm selecting all the columns of customers. I'll selecting all the columns of orders and everything. When you check mark this, what happens is like Snowflake will get sample values for your data, and at the same time Snowflake will also fetch some of the descriptions with the help of their Cortex AI intelligence. So they will get the discussion. If my ID is something like customer ID, it will say like this column is particularly related to the customer ID. If my column is sales, it will say like column is a kind of a fact of consisting of the sales data. Okay. Now I'll click on create and save. So if you see here, right, and it is automatically creating a description for my tables, and it is also fetching some of the sample values for my tables. Okay, if you see here, Snowflake has created the descriptions. Not only the descriptions, it has also classified my tables data into dimensions, facts, time dimensions, metrics, and etc. For example, in the customer table, these are the dimensions. Dimension is like categorical values. Dimensions are something like what or when or how kind of a thing. Whereas facts are something like quantitative value. For example, quantitative value in the sense like if you see here, discount, profit, sales, these are quantitative. Where when it comes to the time dimension, it is something like when is the sale date, which is related to time. That are generally called as time dimensions. When it comes to the metrics, if you see here, the sum of the sale or sum of the revenue is generally called as profit, or sum of the sale is called as revenue. That kind of a metric you can specify here. So once everything is done, okay, you need to add some of the relationship. For example, for now, I'll add a relationship between order and customer. Okay, so I'll add a relationship called order to customer. So my left table is order items, my right table is customers. Generally, they prefer a primary key or a unique key for the right columns. So my primary key is customer ID, and when it comes to this, I have a foreign key customer ID. So I have added one relationship between order to customer. Now I have added all my relationships into this. Okay. Now, if you have some of the queries which are already verified by your business users, for suppose some of the business users might have already verified some of the queries by you, you can add that verified query, whatever the question and whatever the answer. Okay. For suppose now I am not adding any verified queries. Okay. So let's go to the suggestions, what it is suggesting us. So let's review. Okay. So this is the logical query which has been resulted. Okay. So I'll just ask it to run. Okay. And so for this particular question, which cities generate the highest total revenue and what are the first and last order date? I feel this query is fine. I feel the results are good. So I can add it as a verified query, and I can also use it as an onboarding question. What happens when you add it to the onboarding question is like whenever he starts a chart, he will see this one of them as his starting question. So I'll just click on this onboarding question and I'll click on save and continue. When I click on this, if you can see, right, verified query has been added. So now let's go to the playground and understand in the what exactly is happening. So my first question is like on which date is the maximum sale occurred? This is a clear straightforward question. So how the Cortex analyst has analyzed it, it has interpreting the question like what is the maximum date, on which date has the maximum sales occurred. So it has provided the value. So we can check this logical query and the physical query. With the help of this physical query, it's able to come to this logical decision by the NLM. And now if you want, you can add it to the verified query repository also. Once you feel it is good, you can add it and save and continue. So I wanted to show you another thing. For suppose I wanted to know how many are the total number of unique customers. When I click on the total number of unique customers, it it shows like something from the semantic query. So what exactly happens is the Cortex Analyst has two routing methods. One is the semantic query, another one is generating the SQL with the help of the LLM. So when you generate from the semantic query, it directly fetches from your semantic view, the details and everything. Build your trust on that AI model, which are coming from the semantic query are 90% right. So first, the Cortex Analyst will try to fetch the answers with the help of the semantic query. It has certain timeout. If it is taking lot more time in generating a semantic query, it will jump directly into the physical query. So for example, I wanted to know how much sales has happened in the quarter 4, and this is my interpretation, and it is saying like from the October to December of 2025 there is no sale, but my quarter 4 according to the cycle of India is like Jan to March. So I wanted to give it as a feedback. So I created a negative feedback and I've said like this is the feedback. No, the cycle for the Indian physical years from Jan to March. I can submit this feedback. Once you will submit this feedback, you can watch it in your monitoring tab. One thing I forgot is the response metadata. I wanted to show you the response metadata, how it looks. So if you see here the response metadata, this response metadata shows it's like regular SQL generation, right? When it comes to this response metadata, if you see, is this a semantic SQL? It's true. Is it a semantic SQL? It's false. And the question category is if something like it is generated from the SQL or it's something from the verified queries, something like that. And what is the model name it has been using? Claude 4 Sonnet LLM. Okay. You can also include the Cortex search retrieval. What exactly happens is, for suppose your product is a laptop, your product laptop has so many documents of technical specific requirements that you can store it as a string literal, and you can turn it into a vectorized form and store it as a Cortex search service. Now you can link that Cortex search service to this Cortex Analyst service so that you can also play with the product descriptions which we have added. I hope you understood this particular response metadata. Now let's jump into the monitoring tab. If your request is coming from the Cortex playground or from the Snowflake, your request IDs will be here. If your request is coming from an API or an agent, something like Snowflake Intelligent, you'll get your request ID here. Okay. What is exactly the input you have given? Okay. This is the input which you have asked. This is the response output which the Cortex Analyst has given. Okay. And this is the feedback. So once you check the feedback, if you give a negative feedback, it will come like this, and you can provide your feedback like, okay, my user feedback was like quarter 4 is something like Jan to March, not October to December. So if you can also filter it based on the positive feedback, you can also filter it based on the negative feedback. With the help of this playground, we need to create a semantic model such that all our business users questions are getting answered. Okay. This is one way of creating a semantic view. The other way of creating a semantic view is with the help of a YAML file. You can also describe your YAML file in the similar fashion, name of the view and table names. In that particular table, what are the dimensions, what are the facts, what are the measured columns, okay, what are the metrics. If you want, you can also describe some of the verified query. For example, we have described this as the verified query. If you see here how our verified query is there, so this is being verified be my. So if you see here, I'm using this also as an onboarding question, and also it shows has like how who has verified it. Okay. If your model does not have any verified queries, what exactly happens is like on the onboarding, the LLM will try to give 3 or more suggestions from the dataset. If you already have the verified queries, the Cortex Analyst will show you the 5 verified queries. Okay. The other thing is these are the relationships which we have mentioned. YAML is one more way you can create a semantic model apart from UI. The third way of creating a semantic model or a semantic view is with the help of a SQL. You can write simple SQL similar to this, create or replace semantic view, the tables and the descriptions and the comments, and what are the dimensions and what are the comments with some of the sample data. You can create the with the help of this also. Now we are close to ending this session. So if you want to know how many people has used this Cortex Analyst, or how many people are using some of the semantic model or a semantic view or something like that, you can find all the details from this particular metadata set. So in this data set, if you see, right, which is the semantic model has been used, what is the tables being referenced, okay, what is the request ID, who is the user, and the what is the questions, right, the response body, and some of the warnings which it provides, okay, and some of the feedbacks too. So I have provided a feedback, if you remember, right, quarter 4 is according to US physical cycle or something like false, negative, or a positive feedback which you provide, right? So once everything is done, you can also use this cleanup script to clean your everything whatever you have. I'll also show you the cost of this. So if you see here, my Cortex warehouse has already taken 0.5 credits for this particular session, right? So it's only taking the compute, not the cloud service. Since we are closing these sessions now, I have two questions in my mind. If you know the answer, comment it down. My first question is, can a business user use two semantic models and generate an answer for himself? And my second question is, can you change the LLM which the Cortex Analyst is using? If you know the answer, please comment it down. And if you like this session, please comment, like, and share and subscribe. Thank you.